All right, guys, we got back today, and shocker, we're doing the machine lat pull down that I've done 100 times in these videos for you guys. But you know what? I don't really care because I really like this particular exercise. I like this machine. I've explained it in the past, but briefly to summarize, the resistance profile of this machine in particular is different than just a regular cable lat pull down. So this movement actually is going to be heavier through that lengthened or beginning range, and then as I pull down, the movement does get easier towards this end or shorten range, which typically we're going to be very weak in. So that's why if you ever do pull-ups or even just regular cable lat pull downs using the wide bar, you may notice that when you start to fatigue, it's really, really hard to get to this shortened range to get a full contraction. So that's why I like using this machine. So again, unfortunately, or fortunately, we are going to be doing this again. I've already done one working set. We're just doing 3 total today. And then for this back workout, we're not going to be doing any isolated rear delt movements because every exercise that we're doing today, we got 3 back exercises and all 3 are going to be more of a wider grip, but we're just going to hit from different angles. So we're going to do a high to low like this with the lat pull down. Then we've got more of a horizontal row. Again, still overhand wide grip. That's going to primarily be hitting a lot more rear delt anyways, so that's why I don't really care to do much isolation work for that. And then lastly, we're going to be doing a low row, so more from a low to high position, and that's also really going to hit our rear delts as well. So we got that, and we're just going to finish off with one bicep exercise. I'm in a bit of a time crunch today, but I'm only doing one bicep exercise because tomorrow I'm going to be filming another shoulders and arm day. So I'm saving my biceps because I'm going to be touching more bicep stuff tomorrow anyway. So that being said, we got set number 2. My rep range for these, we are going pretty heavy. The machine is, well, it doesn't really matter, but the machine is maxed out. We might even have to retire this machine altogether if I get too strong. Where am I going with that? Oh, rep range. I'm aiming for 8 to 10 reps on these. So first set, I didn't go to failure. Kind of saved myself 1 to 2 reps shy. And then these next 2 sets, I'm definitely going to get close or ideally all the way to failure, including partial reps, primarily in that mid and lengthened range. All right, set number 2. Okay. All right. So, as you can see, I'm doing a wide grip like I always do. Now, even though I'm doing everything today for my exercise selection, overhand wide, you might be like, well, aren't you going to be wanting to target your lats? This particular movement anyways, working from this high to low, and because of my form in this, I'm not leaning too far back. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll still be targeting the lats. I'm purposely keeping my elbows slightly tucked in front. That's going to recruit more lat, especially in the beginning of the actual movement, or sorry, to initiate that movement. But again, because I'm pulling down towards my hips, I'm still going to be targeting a lot of those lower lats as well. So still the mid and still a lot of those lower lats, lower lat fibers. Whereas if I were to do regular wide grip lat pull downs, instead of being upright, but if I were to lean back and now pull, well, then I'm doing some high row type movement, which is borderline getting into more of the same movement pattern as a horizontal row because I'd be leaning far back. So therefore, yeah, I wouldn't be targeting much lat. So this, still going to be targeting the lats, especially those mid and lower lat fibers. And then the other stuff, I mean, you're still going to hit the lats a little bit, but the primary focus for those is going to be, again, rear delts, sort of that mid back, mid trap, rhomboid, things like that. So just switching it up today. You don't have to do the same repeated exercises for your push-pull legs. If you're doing 6 times a week, you don't have to do the same back day every single time. You totally can. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But sometimes I like switching things up. 1, for these videos, 2, for the monotony for myself, especially after doing the same stuff or the same split for, you know, 4 or even 6 weeks. It can get pretty stale pretty quickly. So switching things up. And then also, you don't have to do, you know, like I said, the same workout twice. I get questions asked all the time. Can I repeat? You can, for sure. And I've even touched on this in a previous video. But you can even switch things up where, because I'm doing all overhand wide, for my next back day, I might now focus primarily on doing everything a little more narrow from all different angles. So there's plenty of ways you can do this. The key, the most important part is, as long as you're doing things that you enjoy, because as long as you enjoy it, and also it feels good, if it feels good and you enjoy doing it, then you're going to be able to actually push yourself through the movement. If you fucking hate something, and you're just doing it because someone told you it's good, but you don't like it, it doesn't feel good, you're not going to push yourself. You're not even going to want to do it. So stick to the things that you like to do. There's really no right or wrong when it comes to your own individual needs. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. Talking is an exercise in itself, man. Give myself maybe another minute, and then I'm going to do set number 3, last set. I think we're going to go a bit heavier too on this final set. Oof. Damn, we really might have to retire this machine if it gets too light, but it won't. It's still pretty fucking heavy regardless. Even though if I'm hitting the target rep range, I could always just slow the movement down even more, or I could just try to push for more reps to progressively overload. It doesn't always have to be weight. So, okay. 3rd and final. Now my form for this, I've gone over this so many times, but I'm going to keep stressing it, is the biggest thing is you want to make sure that your hips are planted on that seat the entire time. You don't want any butt lift, because you don't want to be initiating every rep with your body weight by slamming your body weight down to initiate that first rep or every rep after. You want to make sure that your hips are planted on that seat the entire time and strictly initiate every rep by pulling and driving your shoulders and elbows down towards your hips. So I'm not even actually initiating the movement with my arms necessarily. I'm not just thinking about pulling with my arms and recruiting a lot of bicep. I know I'm going to recruit bicep no matter what, but to mitigate that, I'm holding a slightly wider than shoulder width grip, so I'm not going to be recruiting as much bicep, but I'm also not initiating the movement with bicep. I just said bicep like 100 times, so take a shot for every time I said bicep, but I'm initiating every rep through my shoulder and elbow first. So I'm pulling through my shoulder and elbow, doing this motion, driving them down towards my hips. And then keeping that chest and sternum up high the entire time. I'm not rocking back, trying to minimize as much momentum. And then lastly, keeping that elbow slightly tucked in front as well, because I want the emphasis to be on my lats as well. Eight to 10 reps. Full stretch. Control every rep. Control that eccentric. Drive those shoulders and elbows down. Okay. All right, we're moving on. 3rd and final set there. We're gonna go on to some horizontal rows. Undecided. You know what? I think I'm gonna do T-bar rows today. So we'll go there. Ooh. So as always, we are doing a warm-up set or Gage set just to see how we're feeling, and make sure that the machine or that lower platform that you can adjust is set up properly. My goal for this, again, slightly wider than shoulder width grip. And then we're going to bring this down. Slightly wider than shoulder width grip. And primarily, we're going to be focusing, obviously still a bit on the lats like I mentioned, but that's not the main focus. The main focus for this is that mid and upper back and those rear delts as well. So I'm really trying to retract everything as far as possible behind me, pulling my shoulders and elbows as far back as I possibly can. Actually, this is a warm up. We don't need to wrap up for this. Okay, we're gonna actually bring this down. See, this is why we do these warm up or Gage sets, so we can see how we're feeling and how this machine is set up. Oh, it's perfect. Okay. So we're gonna get right into the heavy weight here, starting with 3 plates. Again, rep range is going to be similar to the lat pull down, 8 to 10, slow and controlled reps. Picking my chest up a bit, but I'll run through the form later on. For now, we'll get right into it. We're just doing 2 working sets here. So this is going to be working set number 1. Okay. Damn. No lie, that felt fucking heavy today. But it's whatever. We got 9 reps. Almost 10 with a bit of partials. The second set, I'm going to touch the form. I'm going to go over everything, break it down, my setup, the execution of this movement. Again, I know these exercises can be pretty basic. At least to some of you watching, you might be like, yeah, I already know this. But I do believe proper cueing, certain things to think about, is really what's going to separate you. The little nuance. Sure, in the beginning when you're working out and you're just starting, it can be overwhelming, it can be too much. But if you've already been doing this for a few years, or even a year, and you kind of got the hang of lifting weight, training, the consistency of it, then the nuance and the little details and the cueing can really help. It can help kind of get you a little further to that next level, or at least have a better understanding of things, of movement patterns and what works for you, and how to visualize the actual muscle working that you're trying to target. Okay, we got our second set, but this is gonna be the final set. We're not gonna do drop set either. I'm doing 2 back days a week, so I don't have to always feel the need to cram everything in one day, obviously. So we're gonna go a bit heavier though, because I got around 9-ish reps, maybe 10. I wanna try to fail at 8. So I wanna actually kind of hit that challenging mark around that 6th rep and then struggle to get to 8. So I'm gonna throw a quarter on, And another good point to think about is when you're increasing weight, another way that our ego likes to get involved, and I do this all the time, I'll catch myself. It's funny, a friend of mine made a post about it, and I read it and I thought about it, and I was like, man, that's so true. Like, it's okay to increase the weight by 5 or 10 pounds, or 25 pounds in this case. You don't have to always throw 35s or 45s on every time. But unfortunately, for some reason, we started to think, at least if you've been doing this for a while, your ego does get in the way, especially in the beginning years. But even later on, where you look at like 5 or 10 pound increments, you're like, that's bullshit. That's nothing. And sometimes there's merit to that. Like sometimes, like if I'm getting nearly 10 reps with this, I know, because I've done this with experience, I've done this enough, for the most part, majority of the time, I know, okay, maybe 5 pounds or 10 pounds extra on this is really not going to move the needle. 25 pounds will be a good amount that'll actually be struggling at that target rep range that I want to hit. But there are some times where I'll throw 45 pounds on, even if it's like a leg session or something, thinking like, it's just an extra 45 or 90 pounds if you throw 45 on each side, thinking like, not that big of a deal. And then you get under it and it's like this massive shock where you're like, holy shit, like I'm about to kill myself because I'm letting my ego get in the way of picking the weight, and I don't even know, I'm not thinking straight. So my point is that's one way to check your egos. When you're increasing, it's okay to increase by 5 or 10 pounds at a time. You don't have to jump up to a crazy amount of weight every single time. All right. Last set. We're going for that 6 to 8 rep range on this one. Now, my form on these, I'm intentionally picking chest up. I am recruiting a bit more of my spinal erectors, so my lower back. I am driving my hips a little bit into this. That's completely fine. It is intentional. But I'm still trying to minimize as much momentum as possible. So in this bottom part, I'm protracting on every rep, getting as deep of a stretch as I possibly can. And that's something I emphasize a lot with back, is don't get stuck in this mid-range, really open up, get that stretch through all those upper back muscles, and then initiate that rep, or that first rep, and every rep after, with pulling your shoulder back and then your elbow. You don't have to do it so like robotic like this, but just get in the habit of pulling that shoulder back before you break at the elbow. That's going to initiate all the muscles in your back first before you're actually just pulling with your arms. And then lastly, I even like to sink down slightly in this sort of chest pad seat bench thing. I can't think right now, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm sinking down, bending my knees a little bit. That's just going to move my center of mass a little lower, because like I mentioned in a previous video, if my legs are locked and straight, this weight in general wants to pull me this way. So the only sort of counterweight that I have to keep me locked in is my heels up against the lip of that platform. So if I have my knees straight and locked, sometimes I can add a lot more stress and tension and pressure in the back of my legs, particularly my hamstrings and my knees, where I don't really want. And it can become a limiting factor, because I'll be focused more on that area as opposed to me pulling because it hurts. So bending knees, sinking down, protracting on that beginning rep, driving through and retracting on every rep to get that deep contraction, and picking my chest up. Control, control, control. Oh. Oh. Ooh. Oh. 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 Okay. That's it. So hopefully you can see the form there. Getting that deep stretch, and then again, initiating with those shoulders, retracting, picking that chest up the entire time, and then getting in that full contraction. We're gonna move on though. We're gonna do a low to high row now. Probably single arm on a machine over there. We've used in the past. but I'll meet you there and we'll explain kind of what I'm doing there. Oh. Oh. All right, so this is set number 1. We got 2 working sets here again, like the other ones. Why I'm doing this movement, again, it's just targeting from a different angle. Like I said, we started with the lat pull downs, working from that high to low in that more frontal plane. Then we did, you know, more of a horizontal row pattern on the T-bar row, and then still a horizontal row, but now we're coming in from more of a low row, elbows coming low or hands coming low to high, or elbow low to high rather. I'm still holding overhand on this, and I'm holding slightly wider than shoulder width, just ever so slightly. And if I don't know if you can notice it on camera, if you guys can see it, but I'm purposely doing one arm at a time as opposed to 2, because 1, I'm able to get a bit more range of motion, but also with that extra range of motion, I'm able to get a bit more of a stretch because I can actually turn my chest slightly into that working arm, reach further down while turning into that arm. That's going to create more of a stretch in these upper back, especially my rear delt. And then as I pull, I'm actually intentionally flaring that elbow out. So I'm not keeping the elbow tucked in. I'm making sure that this upper part of my arm, or my bicep rather, is aligned with that handle as I pull the entire time, because I want to focus primarily on the rear delts. I'm just hitting them from a different angle because I'm not doing actual isolation work. Today, this is kind of my rear delt, more rear delt focus movement. But again, I'm still going to be working those upper back muscles like my traps, my rhomboids, and probably a little bit of lat too. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about for the form. So keeping ourselves stable, using the opposing arm, or non-working arm rather, holding somewhere that's going to keep you stable. Use it as a counter. You can have it here. You can have it against the chest rest. Whatever is comfortable for you. It does not matter. Turning into that arm the entire time, and I'm maintaining this position. I'm not rotating the whole time and yanking. Just slow and controlled reps. We're not going crazy heavy. Rep range is going to be somewhere between that 10, 12, or even 15 rep range for that. So that is the intention and focus of this movement. We got 2 more, or sorry, we're doing 2 sets. We got 1 more working set here, and then we're just going to finish off with 3 sets of biceps. All right, next set. I'm going to start with my right this time, just because you guys are already on that side. And I don't want to make you guys have to walk all the way around to the other side. You know, I'm thinking of you guys. All right. I'm retracting that shoulder back as far as I can, pulling that elbow as far behind me as I can. Push that shoulder forward. Remember, protract, push that shoulder forward, drive. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't count. Sometimes it's hard counting and explaining. I think I got around like 12 to 15. All right. Oh man. All right, guys, that is it for the back. We're gonna do some biceps just to finish off. Like I said, I'm in a bit of a time crunch, but I want to get you guys these videos so you can learn something. So we're gonna do cable bicep curls, probably on a straight bar, just basic, but I'll run through the form with that. Still super basic movement, but people get it wrong. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually switching out the bar. Now, there's actually nothing wrong with the easy curl bar. I don't mind it, and it feels ergonomical for most people. But one thing to think about is your movement pattern of your actual arm. Like, obviously everyone's gonna have different clavicle or shoulder widths. So that's gonna dictate how far of a grip they need to hold, but also the movement pattern of their actual elbow joint. Like if I curl up, it's not going directly in line unless I'm in this sort of internally rotated position, but then that's really uncomfortable on my wrist. Now, the easy curl might mitigate that discomfort, but I don't really want to be curling always from this internally rotated position. Sometimes I just want to be more neutral. So if I want to be neutral with my shoulders, it feels more comfortable on my shoulders as I curl up. If you notice, my hands are actually now going to be outside slightly of my shoulders. So I'm using a wider bar, and you can use a lat bar, that's fine too. And I'm just going to mimic this motion. So I might look like I'm holding slightly wider, but in reality, I'm just keeping my biceps pointed straight towards the wall in front of me. And then as I curl, I'm really just working within that movement pattern in my elbow, which is just a hinge joint. So I'm just working in the direction of the actual bicep and the movement. So a little tip. Sometimes it can be, uncomfortable for people, or they might feel their shoulders bothering them when they do curls. They're like, why does my shoulder hurt when I'm curling? And it could very well be that you're just holding in an unnatural grip for your body. Okay, I'm gonna do the first set because we got 3 sets here. Just gonna get right into it. I'm not gonna explain the form yet. I mean, the bicep movement, I'm sure you guys know it, but I'm gonna go through it later on in the actual sets. We might pyramid up in weight for that final set. So I might start a bit lighter, but aiming for 15, maybe even 20 reps. Okay. All right, second set here. We're gonna go heavier because that was a little light-ish. I got to 15 and then I pushed to 20, but I started failing closer to 20. So I'm gonna increase ever so slightly by about 15 pounds. And then maybe the next set, the final set, I'll increase again and go even heavier. Now, some people might be like, well, that's backwards. Why not just start heavy? And then as you start to fatigue, go lighter and lighter. You could do that, but I like doing it this way. I just find as I'm kind of working up to that weight, I get stronger, even though I may not be as strong necessarily, but my joints start to feel better when I go heavier gradually, as opposed to starting heavy. It kind of hurts my joints. So I don't know, I've been doing it for 16 years. My joints definitely start to hurt. Okay. 15 reps to failure. Oh. Come on. Oh, shit. Okay. That was good. We are going to go heavier on that last set. I want to try to push to that 10 to 12 rep range and fail around then. I'll go through my form then because I'm out of breath. So it's going to take a little longer rest time, maybe like a minute or so extra. I get asked this actually quite a bit, especially through clients, where they'll be like, how long should I take a rest for? And the answer is totally individual. I mean, I just say take rest, given you're not on your phone, you're not distracted, so you're not going to be taking too long of a rest where you start to get actually cold and unmotivated. But take rest just until you get fully recovered from that set. It doesn't matter if it's an isolation exercise. You don't have to go. I mean, if you're in a time crunch and time is not on your side, 100% you can do fast, rest times and quicker sets. But if you got a little bit of a window throughout your day to kind of get in a quality workout, then I say rest is actually on your side and it's favorable for you. So take as long as a rest as you need until you feel recovered and recuperated enough to get the most out of the next set. Your whole goal and focus should be applying yourself and pushing yourself as hard as you possibly can for every single set. That doesn't mean I'm going to go as hard as I can, give myself 30 seconds, and then go as hard as I can again. You're actually going to be doing yourself a disservice because the limiting factor is going to be your heart rate is going to be really high. Your breathing is going to be out of whack. You're not going to be able to get enough oxygen to the muscle. So you're actually just going to fatigue yourself before the muscle actually gets fatigued, if that makes sense. So you're going to be doing yourself more of a disservice long term. It's fine here and there, but take as long as you need. If you need a couple minutes for even bicep curls, it's completely fine. Just refrain from going on your phone, browsing the internet, talking too much to people. Although talking to people is great. I think it's good for mental health. But, you be the judge. It's totally individual. And just give yourself enough time to give yourself the full 100% that you can on that next set. So we got third and final set here. I did increase the weight to 90 pounds, so an extra 15 pounds on top of that. So 30 pounds total than what we started with on that first set. Now my form, I know this is simple. I know it's a bicep curl. It's literally just this. However, we tend to get ego in the way, and we tend to recruit other muscles around us to initiate the movement. Our whole goal should be to focus on the bicep. Our goal is not to work the shoulders necessarily. Now, if you're intentional about it, that's completely fine. And what I mean by that is you don't want much elbow drift. So you don't want to be curling too much like this, because at the end of the day, yes, that can shorten the bicep more by having some shoulder flexion, but not for this movement. That's going to work for something overhead where you actually are just stuck in this more shoulder flexed position, and then you're curling in sort of towards your face or behind your head. Yeah, that's going to fully shorten the bicep. But when you're doing, you know, sort of just a basic conventional curl, whether it's dumbbell or cable, you don't want to be having too much elbow drift. That's not going to shorten. And if anything, we've talked about this so many times, the minute that elbow comes forward and stacked directly underneath your wrist, you're doing what's called stacking the joints, where your wrist and elbow becomes stacked, like I just mentioned. But that line of force, which is gravity, or in this case, the cable, which is a visualized representation of where that line of force actually is. So if I'm coming up in the movement with elbow drift, now if you notice, my forearm is perfectly aligned in the direction of that cable. There is actually no tension really on my bicep anymore. I can hold this here all day. All that tension actually is now on my shoulders. So yes, I could take a step back. Now if you notice, the direction of that cable is moving away from my forearm. So now there's going to be there's going to be tension on the bicep. So you could do elbow drift in this position. But if you're standing close, there is absolutely no need to be curling up like this. There's no tension towards the top of that movement. So my goal, as my sweater gets jammed in between the machine, the goal for this is you want to stand close enough to the cable. You want to stand close enough to the cable so that as you initiate that first rep, when your elbow's at 90 degrees, that cable should be at 90 degrees with your wrist. Why? Because that's going to be the hardest part of the movement right here in this mid-range. That's going to mean I'm going to be strongest at this part of the movement, meaning I'm going to be able to overload the muscle or the bicep more efficiently with this particular setup, if that makes sense. So because I'm strongest in that mid-range, I want peak tension in that mid-range. At least for the most part, I'm going to be able to overload the bicep more efficiently in short form. So without getting too technical, staying close enough, roughly, so that you're working and targeting more of that mid-range, because you're going to be stronger in that mid-range. You're going to overload the muscle more efficiently. Next, you want to make sure that your shoulder in this upper part of your arm is locked and stable the entire time, through the entire duration of the movement. So in other words, again, I don't want that elbow drift too much, particularly for this setup. And then lastly, all I'm thinking about is just bringing my forearm to my bicep. That's it. So I'm just here, coming up, full contraction, squeezing my bicep, bringing my forearm to my bicep. And then as I come down, I'm controlling that eccentric. And then I'm even coming down the full way, squeezing my tricep, if you notice on some of those previous reps that I did, squeezing the tricep to fully lengthen the bicep to get a full stretch in that bicep. So, third and final set to failure. So I'm standing over top of that cable or close to it, chest up. You can lean slightly over, that's fine, to give yourself a bit more stability. And then focus on bringing that forearm to your bicep, keeping that shoulder stable the entire time. Squeeze that tricep, fully lengthen that bicep, and again, repeat. Now, a little bit of elbow drift is completely fine, but you want to minimize as much momentum and swinging as possible. And again, a little bit of body English is fine too. You can move in the movement. You don't have to be so rigid, but just be cognizant of that. All right. All right, guys, that is it for today's back and biceps workout. We did all overhand wide grip movements. Started with lat pull downs, went into a horizontal pull, which was the chest supported T-bar row, and then finished the back off with more of a low row, focusing a bit more on that rear delt as sort of the primary focus for that movement, but still, you're gonna be working all those upper back muscles. And then finished the overall workout with 3 working sets of just regular straight bar bicep curls on the cable. Now, there's one thing I want you to learn or walk away from. I've stressed this before, I stressed it earlier on. Work in that full range of motion with your back. Focus on getting that deep stretch. So many people stay in that mid-range because they're more comfortable, they're stronger. Remove that ego, you know, strip down the plates a bit and focus on those extremes in terms of the ranges, getting that full stretch into a full contraction. And then other than that, that is pretty much it. So as always, keep working hard, be diligent, be intentional with your movements. But most importantly, take it easy. And if you made it this far in the video, you're a real one and I appreciate you.